So companies like Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian have completely transformed the way cars are made and how they work. Now a new startup called Also is trying to do the same thing, but for e-bikes and other smaller electric vehicles. And today we've got the pleasure of taking a look at Also's very first model. It's an e-bike that's going on sale next year, and I've got to say it is without a doubt the coolest e-bike I have ever experienced. So stick around, I'm gonna show you everything about the Also e-bike. I'm gonna take you on a tour of all its coolest features, and I'm gonna tell you how it rides. And later in the video, I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek into what else Also is working on, because this company is not just doing e-bikes. So before I show you Also's first bike, I thought we should get into the backstory of this company. What exactly is Also, and what is it trying to do? And I thought, what better place to do that than in front of all these prototypes they have on display here. Also started as a project within Rivian that was building an electric bike. Then at some point they spun that out into its own company. So what's Also trying to do? The idea is to reimagine the e-bike from the ground up in the same way that Rivian and Tesla and some of these Chinese brands did for cars. And I think the through line between all of them, the reason that a Tesla or Rivian or some of these new Chinese brands feel better, feel like an improvement over cars of the past, is that all these companies started from scratch. They didn't have to take a gas car, a platform designed for engines, and kind of re-engineer it for the electric era. They just started from a clean sheet and they decided what should go in a car. And that's what Also is trying to do with e-bikes and with other vehicles, is throw out everything you know about e-bikes and build one from scratch. Also came out of stealth earlier this year, and up until now, we didn't know exactly what they were working on. They said they were gonna be smaller than car vehicles. Everybody kind of assumed that would mean e-bikes or scooters or things like that, but now we actually know, and now we can take a look at Also's first product. Everything you see here, pretty much, probably except for like the tires, is designed and developed in-house. You have dual suspension, a really powerful motor in the middle there in this really interesting looking square compartment, and overall a really appealing, I think, looking e-bike. There were some spy shots that came out that were of a really blurry Also e-bike, and the internet and I too was kind of like, that's it, really? But in person, this thing looks really, really cool and unlike any other e-bike on the market. You've got a very Rivian-like headlight, and I asked them, was this intentional? And they said, yeah, you know, it is a little bit of a callback to our foundation, you know, to the company where we started out. So if we come around to the back here, you can see you've got an integrated brake light. And actually, when you squeeze the brakes, boom, there you go. Speaking of braking, enormous disc brakes, front and rear. So let me take you on a little tour of this cockpit. So over here you have this blue button that cycles through the different menus on the screen. I don't know if you can hear that, but it is a very satisfying and very clicky button. You have this dial, which does your volume. Then coming over to this side, here is your throttle. I don't know if you can hear that, vroom vroom. And here is how you change your pedal assist setting. So this will determine how much power is going to the wheels. This actually has not just a brake light and a headlight, it has turn signals. This little trigger behind the brake. So let me show you how that works. Hit that and boom, you got a turn signal. Like I said, almost everything here was designed completely in-house, and that includes the motor. This is not your standard off-the-shelf, you know, Bosch unit that you'll see in a lot of other e-bikes. Also spent a lot of time and a lot of days engineering this very special drive unit. So as you can see, the pedal, the crank, is not actually attached to this belt drive. You got the pedal down here, and then you've got the belt drive up there. Why did they do that? So there are actually two different motors housed inside of here. You have one where the pedal slots in, then you have another that's driving the wheels. And so what this means is that there's actually no mechanical connection between the pedal and the wheels. You know, in the auto industry, we have something called brake-by-wire, we have steer-by-wire. That's when your mechanical inputs don't actually have mechanical connection to the outputs. It's when everything is handled by, electronic impulses. So the way it works is the motor down here, where the pedal is, senses the inputs that you give it by pedaling. It translates that to the upper motor, which then drives the wheels. If they didn't say that, I wouldn't have known that there was no mechanical connection, because it is really convincing. When you're pedaling, it is assisting, and it just feels pretty natural. Yeah, another really interesting thing about this motor is that it is actually a structural member of the bike. It is housed in this magnesium housing that is basically the same shape as this square, and the rest of the bike kind of bolts onto that. So this motor serves a double purpose as both a motor and also a structural component of the bike. That is definitely some Rivian-like or some Tesla-like thinking there. So I gotta say, I came into this a little bit skeptical. Does the e-bike really need to be reinvented? What does a Rivian or a Tesla approach to the e-bike really do? How can an e-bike be better, or a lot better, than it already is? And I gotta say, I think also pretty much convinced me. And there were a couple of things that really drove that point home. Let me show you what I mean. They basically put what I would call a Rivian grade or a Tesla grade infotainment system into this e-bike, which I have never seen before. You get this really nice looking circular screen. You rotate to ride, as you can see. You rotate this whole housing, and that's how you unlock the bike. And then you have just this really delightful user interface that kind of reminds me of Rivian. It just looks really charming and really well thought out. It also works really well. As you can see, I'm gonna swipe here, just super smooth swiping. You don't get that in a lot of cars, much less e-bikes. So let me take you through some of the screens here. You have this main screen, which is gonna show things like your speed, your range, your battery percentage. One thing that really impressed me is, see up there, you have 82% battery. Most e-bikes are not gonna tell you the exact percentage of battery that you have left. It'll be like 4 bars that go from green to red. On this, you have the real number, 82%. You can just tap it, and then it shows you what that means in miles. That bar over there on the right is your power meter, so it's gonna show how much power you're using and how much you're regenerating. One that brings me to another really cool point. This bike has regenerative braking, just like an electric car, which is really, really cool. So when you pull the brake lever about halfway, that's gonna be regen. And then if you pull it even more than that, you're gonna get your actual friction brakes. In this screen, you can also choose your drive mode. Click there, you got all purpose, you got sport, and that's how you change drive modes. You also have a manual mode that I'll get into in a sec. But everything just has these great little drawings and graphics. I'm really impressed with this software. Scrolling over, you have a trip screen, so you can see how much power you're using, how many miles you've gone, that kind of thing. You have a compass, or if you pair your phone, that's right, you can pair your phone to this. This will be a navigation screen, so you can get turn-by-turn navigation right here in this display. And there's a media player screen, so same deal. If you pair your phone, you can actually just pause and play your favorite podcast or whatever as you're going to work. Also developed all this software in-house. They also designed all the chips that go throughout this e-bike. And so that means that kind of just like a Rivian R1T or an R1S, this has a zonal architecture, just a smaller, shrunken down version that doesn't do quite as much stuff. But nonetheless, they have control over the entire bike, over all the electronics of the bike, which means that this bike gets over-the-air software updates, which is really, really cool. So that infotainment system and the software and the over-the-air updates and just the way that whole system looks is one of the things that really impressed me about the Also e-bike. There was another moment though in my tour of this bike that really blew me away. Let me show you that. So let me bring your attention to this part right over here that's holding the seat. See how there's a seam right over here? So this component can actually be swapped out, and you can swap in a bunch of different versions of it. You can have a cargo version that has a big rack on the back over here. You can put seats on your bike. You can have a taller one if you're a tall person, or a shorter one if you're a short person, and also says that there's gonna be a bunch of other options coming down the road. All right, so let me show you how one of the very coolest features on the Also e-bike actually works. We're gonna turn this regular commuter e-bike into a cargo bike in just a few seconds. So first thing you do, go to the screen over here and you click swap seats. It just electronically unlocked, and I just picked this thing up. It's actually pretty light. Put it wherever I want to put it. Set it aside. And then this one should just drop right in, recognize it, and it should just lock in and we'll be ready to go. Boom, there you go. Now you have a cargo bike that is super duper sturdy in just, what, 5 seconds? Pretty cool. One of the really cool things about this also is, as you can see, it's got pins in the bottom. So this actually electronically connects to the rest of the bike. That's how you get your brake light and your turn signal back there. It also means that each one of these things can be paired to a specific rider. So if you have one, you have the cargo bike one, and you have your preferences set, when you put that in, the bike will know that it's you who wants to ride. Same thing goes for the other one. If it's your wife's or your partner's or your boyfriend's, you just put in yours and it knows what their settings are, which is really, really clever stuff from Also. The more that you look around this bike, the more there are just clever features everywhere. It's clear that they really thought through everything about this bike. Here's another really cool feature, and this also felt very Rivian to me. This is the battery from the Also e-bike. You can take it out and you can charge it on your desk or in your house, wherever, but you can also just use it as a portable battery bank, which is a really, really cool feature. It's kind of exactly like vehicle to home or vehicle to everything features that we see on electric vehicles, where you can plug different appliances. You can plug your house into your car. So you can totally imagine people, you know, they're going to the beach, they're going on an adventure, as this bike over here suggests, and they want to plug in their phone, they want to plug in some other stuff, and boom, I mean, you have a pretty large battery pack at your disposal. Another cool part of this is that this is actually full of Rivian R1 cells, the same exact battery cells that you get in a Rivian R1S or R1T, or just stacked up inside of there. And here's one other really cool thing. See that? There is an e-ink display on the side of the battery pack that refreshes every now and then and tells you what state of charge your battery is at. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what makes the Also e-bike cool. I think that's pretty clear. One thing we haven't talked about is what it's actually like to ride, and I've got good news for you there. I was super impressed with this when I rode it for about an hour the other day. So first of all, it's just really, really quick. The Also e-bike will go up to 28 miles an hour, making it a class 3 e-bike. It'll hit that when you're pedaling via pedal assist. It'll only go 20 via the throttle. But overall, it's just a really quick accelerating e-bike. Also says that this motor that they developed has more torque than any other e-bike motor on the market, and you definitely feel that. I went 28 miles an hour up a hill, and I basically felt like it was totally fine. I did not break a sweat at all, and that was really impressive. Another interesting thing is there isn't really a gearbox. So if you're an e-bike nerd, you might understand what I'm about to say, which is that this pretty much functions like an e-bike with a torque sensor and a continually variable transmission. What that basically means in practice to people who don't understand that is that you just basically hop on, set the pedal assist level that feels right to you, and you just ride, and the bike kind of takes care of the rest. It makes it really easy. The pedal assist multiplies the effort you put in, and then the motors just basically figure out kind of what sort of gearing works for that particular moment. So if you're going up a hill, it'll make it a little easier. If you're going on a flat, it'll make it a little harder. And it all works really, really well and super smoothly. For people who don't want that continually variable transmission, who want a little bit more control over the gear that they're in, there actually is an option for that. So you can set it to manual mode, you can set it to trail mode within that, and then instead of setting the pedal assist settings, that little lever on the right side actually lets you shift through gears. The thing is, there are no gears in this bike. It's all pretend, it's all mimicking gears, but it actually is really convincing. Another thing I'll call out is the brakes, because if you have a 28-mile-an-hour e-bike that gets to 28 miles an hour really darn fast, you're gonna want a good set of brakes. And I'm happy to report that this definitely stops very well. It has these huge hydraulic disc brakes. It also has that regenerative braking that I talked about. And overall, you don't have to worry about stopping when you're going at 28 miles an hour on this thing. I should also mention that dual suspension totally soaks up bumps, no problem. I think a lot of people have had that experience where you're on one of those rented city bikes, it's big and heavy and clunky, and you're hitting every pothole and you can feel it up your spine, and it's loud, and this is not at all like that. This totally floats over bumps, super comfortable. So how far can you go on the Also e-bike? They're gonna have two different battery packs, a standard one and a large pack. And in the bigger one, also says you'll be able to do anywhere from 25 miles to 100 miles on a full charge, depending on which pedal assist level you're at. So the biggest question that you have, the biggest question I had going into this, the biggest question I had, especially after I spent some time actually riding and being around the Also, because frankly, and I'll be perfectly honest here, I might buy one of these things, is how much does it cost, right? E-bikes can be really, really expensive, and there's a big difference between if Also reinvented the e-bike and it costs $10,000 or $12,000 versus making a really cool e-bike that costs $2,000 or $3,000. And it's somewhere in between, but I was pleasantly surprised by how little this bike actually costs. So the launch edition Also will cost around $4,500 when it goes on sale next year. It is pretty much the same as the performance model over here, except that the launch edition, instead of these kinds of gray covers on the motor, it has more fun purple ones. So that begs the question, how much is the base model? The base model, they say, is under $4,000, which, yeah, none of this is that cheap. But also, if you look around at the other e-bikes out there, it's not that expensive either, especially when you consider the power, the features, the software, all this stuff that you get that you really can't get in another e-bike. So at the outset, I told you that e-bikes are not the only thing that Also is working on, that I'll show you what else Also is building. And this stuff is so top secret. They have it behind this sheet over here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here it is. This is one of the next Also vehicles. It is, as you can see, a four-wheeled delivery van style e-bike. So you sit in there, just like a bike, you can pedal, and you can also carry a bunch of packages. So you can think of this almost like a mini-sized version of the Rivian van that it sells to Amazon and some other delivery partners. So the benefit of this kind of thing seems pretty clear to me. You've probably seen this sort of vehicle maybe in the bike lanes of New York, and it means basically that you can deliver packages without getting stuck in traffic. It's also cheaper to run than a big, let's say, UPS van. So this thing is pretty cool. So you're probably thinking, why do the delivery drivers get to have all the fun? Why can't I have a four-wheeled Also e-bike to go do my errands and go to the grocery store and stuff? Well, you can. Also is also working on a four-wheeler for consumers. Here it is. This thing is really, really cool looking. I gotta say, I love the e-bike. I'm a little bit less convinced on this thing, but Also says that there's a market for it. They say that basically this can take the place of a golf cart in places where people use golf carts to get around. There are a lot of neighborhoods like that. You know, maybe it takes the place of a really huge e-bike for a family that's trying to get 2 or 3 kids to school. You've got this big bin in the back where you could put a couple of kids, maybe like, I don't know, 1 or 2 adults, or a whole bunch of Trader Joe's bags. And there you go, maybe this will be interesting to some people. We'll have to see. So as we wrap up, I wanted to give some final thoughts on Also and on its first e-bike. Overall, I think, as you can tell, I am super impressed. I think from the way that this bike rides, to the technology in it, to the software, to the way it looks, this is a really, really impressive bike, and I think a lot of people are gonna like it, especially at that price of $4,000 to $4,500, which, by the way, also says it was able to get the price that low because it's so vertically integrated, because it doesn't need to buy motors and controllers and circuit boards from other companies. It designs all that stuff in-house. But you can't deny that this is a risky business. There are tons of other e-bike startups that have had really major problems or even gone bankrupt. Look at companies like Cowboy, Van Moof, Rad Power Bikes, Cake. Those are just some of the e-bike startups that have had real troubles in the last couple of years. I do think though, given the bike that I saw today, that Also's got a very good chance of pulling this off. All right, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the InsideEVs YouTube channel, and let us know in the comments, what do you think of the Also e-bike? Would you buy one? See you in the next one.